So there tends to be there's a long story to all this, and I will explain all this in other lectures, etc., in terms of what is radionics, what is being put out, what energies are there, how are they measurable. And this is one thing that none of the radionic organizations have really got down to explain. If they really are device-based, then what are the devices doing? How do we make better ones? Well, they never talk about this. And you have to say to yourself, what is going on? How can you call yourself a radionic organization when you really have no information about the hardware? And nobody seems to know anything. So when we get into all this stuff, what is it? What is it all about? And they don't deal with this. And they don't quite understand subtle energy physics. They don't get it. So, something that, of course, I have a master's degree in and have studied for over 30 years. So, none of this is ever discussed. What is this? How are they doing it? Now, one of the major problems I've had with Copen and his products is that when you open them up, there's really nothing there. Here we go again. It's the strict just wire flows. Now, without major amplifiers and other things, you've got a lot of dials, which are working on, again, basically thought forms, human energy thought forms that you are creating and then projecting towards a target. So you're talking about psychic healing, psychic sending, psychic tuning. That's really what you're coming down to, because there are no discernible energies being put out. There's no amplifiers. There's no broadcasters. All this stuff, while some of these have electronic components in them, they tend to be all not functioning. Now, let me tell you what happened with me. Now, when I found out about Copen about 30 years ago, I had limited funds at the time. I ordered, actually, their base one-dial unit. So I had one dial on it. It was in a nice little box, nice little dial, had a stainless steel plate on it that you lay things on, and you were just supposed to tune this. It was electrically based. So they said. So again here, this isn't philosophical mumbo-jumbo. This isn't my opinion. This isn't, you're talking about a competitor, Thor, so of course you're not friendly. Well, first of all, we are not competitors, and we don't even have anything on the market quite yet. We will be, and I'm all based in results. I will drop anything that I have in an instant, less than an instant, a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a second, if it works better than anything I produce. I'm into results. I don't need to make money from selling products. I'll make money from using the products, or I will make myself well, save people's lives. I don't care. I'm into results. The reason why I manufacture anything is because I can't find legitimate products. They're overpriced, they're overstated, they're over junk. That's what they really are. They're just nothing there. So let's make that clear from number one. I'm really the only legitimate source that I've ever run into that truly is neutral, seeking truth. And that's what success tech is all about. It's about truth, the highest level of truth, called gnosis. When you reach the state of gnosis, you know what's right and what's wrong. You know what is wisdom and what is nothing more than delusion or profit-taking. It's as simple as that. So it's very important to understand that from anything that you hear from me. I'm into results, plain and simple. Quite frankly, manufacturing anything, running a business, and supplying things is a big pain in the bottom. I'd prefer not to do that and use technologies to manifest, and the heck with the rest of it. So I got this one dial instrument. It was a box approximately 3 inches by about 5 inches, one dial, and a stainless steel, highly polished input plate, and it plugged in. So I said, well, that's interesting. Again, as usual with everything that comes from him, it's attractive and it's well made. I believe these were like $150 or something at the time that I bought it. I don't think these are sold anymore because there probably isn't enough profit in them. So I said, well, that's interesting. And as a researcher, of course, the first thing I do is look at, well, what's in here? What makes all these Copen fancy-dancy units work? So as usual, when you open these things up, and I had a comment from somebody who, when we first produced instruments, we produced them pretty much like the old Abrams units and the Drown units, which are basically just potentiometers connected to a couple of plates through a wiring system. No juice, no nothing. And of course, this is what certain writers and people push then, which we started off with, like Charles Casamato, who just said, look, it's the pattern. They're psychic tools. You don't need any electricity or other things. Of course, we found out that that was not really true, but the pattern units that work through just wiring do work. And if you have a good psychic energy field, you can make these work pretty well at a fairly high level. This is what people do when they just have a schematic type or drawings of the circuit that use them as well. And this does work. It does empower things. The problem is not at the levels of strength that we need in this day and age. So from the printed out patterns that do give you energy to the actual physical boxes, which is pretty much a 50% increase in empowerment, to finally the electrical units, which are 100% more powerful over all the other designs. So it is critical and has been talked about and proven by others that this is the case as well. Something happens when you use electricity as a carrier wave. And we'll get into all that, but that's a bigger discussion. We're trying to talk about Bruce Copen in general. So I opened this up and looked at it, and then what it came there is there was an actual circuit plate in there. Circuitry. And there was actually a number on there from a particular manufacturer. I forget who exactly that was. Panasonic, Sanyo, whatever. And this was actually a surplus CD-ROM plate. And of course, you know, nobody thinks anything works unless you have some sort of electronics in there. So you won't get any credibility. So you have to put in something there. So apparently this was something that he bought in mass and then stuck it in there and connected a potentiometer to it. Okay, what does that mean? So, well, we further looked at the fact that this was an electrified unit. So, well, of course, it must be electric going through the particular circuit board. There was not. There was no electricity going through the unit whatsoever. The electrical power was going only and directly to the actual light on the unit. So, I guess I forgot to say that there was a switch with a light there. So, you would plug it in, flip the switch, and the light would come on. And the electricity only went to the light. It did not go to anything. So, we call this kind of an idiot light. So, the fact is that, you know, oh, it's on. It makes you think it's working. So the point is all this was a potentiometer with a dial. I believe it was 1 to 10 on there. And then you put stuff on there and psychically tuned it. And this was supposed to do something. Here again, you're laying stuff onto this actual plate. And I'm not a big fan of stainless steel for this. It's not the best kind of conductor, although all metals are conductors. But, you know, really good metals that conduct at high levels, like the wiring in your house, are copper. So I've always used copper. Now, there are people using these stainless steel plates because they tend not to look bad, because you have to polish and remove tarnish from copper because it builds up. And the reason that is because it's very active. Well, stainless steel isn't. So it's not a good idea. It's bad engineering. So that's strike 2 and 3. So basically, while these units were attractive, I was shocked to find out there's nothing to it. Now, are his other units like that? Well, the big punchline, people, is they are. So there's really nothing going on there. They look good. They have electronics in them. They have circuit boards. It's not doing anything. So we're getting back to this psychic reality to it. And when you have a really nice made unit and the impression is there, is you assume something is happening when it isn't. So this is the sad thing about Copen and his entire product line. Some are a little more electric than others. He's got all sorts of different devices. And the point is what do they do? What do they put out? Now, there's no talk about anything. There is no testimonials. People aren't saying how they like it. There isn't anything else there. So, I mean, it's really hard. I mean, to judge anything by that. And where do you get, anyway, if a manufacturer states something, well, what does that mean? Are you going to put up the negative stuff? As a manufacturer myself, well, of course, I'm not going to put up the customers that don't like the product. So you only have glowing testimonials, if you have that. But these people don't have any testimonials. I mean, this person sold radionic instruments for many, many years. We're talking about 40, 50 years. And there's nothing to prove that they work. Apparently, a lot of people bought them. And I know why they bought them. They're very attractive units. And he has training. He has the rate books. He has the things if you want to go through it. And this is a fascination by alternative practitioners, alternative doctors who love these types of things. And through the psychic tuning process, which, as I've stated, a William Bankston has proven with his hands-on healing course, which is kind of a misnomer because healing took place regardless of whether there was touching, looking, or anything else. You just basically did a simple connection. You just went there and were connected to the process, and people were healed. And we're talking about he's a very careful researcher and used mice. And mice who were sick, plain and simple, got well from doing virtually nothing except kind of being involved in the process. Matter of fact, his philosophy is get out of the way of it. Yeah, you want to have a slight intention. Think of that for about a half a second and then get away. Don't think about it. And this has been proven through his 30 years of research with live animals, has gotten amazing results. What do we do about it? So it is mind-screwing. So what is this and with this? So you get there, you get a device of his, it looks nice, you plug it into the wall so that the light comes on and you're just psychic tuning again. Well, the point is this is not any better than getting a paper schematic and using it, which would have cost you virtually nothing. So this is the problem with Copen. He doesn't have a scientific background. He apparently was, I don't know who helped him or if he had some manufacturing capacities himself. This is something he could do. I find that hard to believe from a literature, poem writing, play writing individual that he was. But he was very big into dowsing. And of course, he got involved in some sort of lost item that was involving the government, etc., for dowsing, and he failed at it. They would never found the object that they were looking for. It doesn't say much for his dowsing skills. And the fact that he got some notoriety from that because he talked about dowsing but actually failed at locating an object is dubious claim to fame. So what's that all about? So, this is very typical. And of course, here we go again, people who die young. What does all that mean? Well, that's a good question. What does it all mean? So that's the big problem with doing that. Of course, people think because these, and that's, I'm sure, 90% of what he was doing. And of course, I guess if you install 10 dials, you can install 30 or 40 or 50. So I'm sure this was considered, well, look at how complicated and how many dials are on there. This really must work. And then he would develop rate books, which is giving you the pre-setup. So if you wanted to make a homeopathic preparation, well, you just needed to look it up in his book and then put it on the dials. Fairly easy to do. So as I said, I doubt if anybody ever tuned these manually for their own usage. You're using his rate books because there's way too much to dial here. But doesn't that sound official? And this is all the great things that trick people all the time and basically how stupid people are. And I think he was quite wise in this area to make these very pretty, complicated, nothing inside boxes. And this is so true. And because of this, he was able to maintain his sales. Now, as soon as he actually died, and I don't know how he was doing close to his death in terms of it, people in the radionic business have known of Copen for years. So, and because they're so well made and attractive units, everybody said, "Gee, yeah, those are nice." And they weren't that expensive in the bigger picture. You're talking about $1,500 to $3,000 for most of his units. Not exactly a lot. You could actually get a multi-dial unit for around $1,200 to $1,500. Not a lot for something that's made like this and something you're going to use forever. So, it not exactly was a fortune for anybody who was serious. So they were technically affordable. And of course, they didn't look like the very simplistic stuff that I originally made, and even what's produced today, which are these dial boxes that are just simple dial units connected to a wire going to different plates. So you're producing a thought form through the use of dials, numbered dials, to create some thought form energy that then is transferred to a particular target. So, and you can use that energy for anything. So if you wanted to dial in a particular rate for anything, for herbal substances, vitamins, homeopathics, all that you can dial into these machines, but there's nothing there in terms of that. So, but when you have a beautiful machine like is manufactured, you're giving the entire process credibility. And I think that was a large part of it. So he was doing that. He came up with multi-wave oscillators. This is a frequency-based device. I'm not sure how his works. I have his, but I've never tried it. He's probably a tunable frequency device that those are, with a lot of dials on the back again. And of course, you'd use his particular rate books to tune them in. Generally, multi-wave oscillators are not tunable. What you do is the system itself produces this wide range of frequencies that are supposed to be very helpful for cellular structures, which, when empowered, then heal whatever the problem you may be having. As he also came up with, and I think he was the originator of these cards, which are basically a credit card type thing. They're bigger than that, but it has a magnetic strip on there that is somehow programmed that you then put in his different devices and can buy these. You can either make the card yourself from using his blank ones, which you can then program, or you get them programmed. And these, again, were just inserted in machines to be able to broadcast to a particular person. Now, of course, here we go again, of the fact of trying to make things easy. These units that were strict broadcasters don't have any dials on them, because I'm sure people complained about that. It's just too much work to do that. And of course, what's inside of these things? Nothing yet again. So you're just sticking the card in there into the slot. It's going down in there. You turn on the switch, and it is a pure psychic transmission again. Whatever little electromagnetic field is there, you're picking that up and transferring it to whomever you're sending it to. And again, they have these shiny stainless steel plates that you can put photographs and things on. So the usual situation, which is a certain industry standard, these plates, but it just shows you how off the industry is. They're not using what they should be, because it costs a little more. It's another $5 to put a copper plate on something, and they'd prefer to only spend 10 cents. So I think that's bad engineering yet again, and it shows people who don't quite understand the entire process. So he made these kind of units as well. He's got a few other unique type units out there. But they're all based pretty much on the same thing. The multi-wave oscillator apparently does put out some real frequencies, Hertzian field frequencies. Most of the other units, I should say all the other units, are not putting out any measurable energies. They're not putting out anything, and radionics generally doesn't put out those kind of fields unless it's a particular type of energy. So what does that mean? You're using these energetic fields again. Subtle energy physics is what this is all about. You're putting out subtle energy fields which can be measured. It's just that there isn't any meters to do this quite yet, because it's an expensive process to make something like this, but you certainly could. So you have that as part of the process, and that's what Bruce Copen's actual machines were. Now, again, we have no follow-up. There's no research. People use this, and personally, they will have their own comments on it or not. I just don't know. Again, because of the secrecy involved here in terms of the lack of healing freedom around the world, because you can't make claims for these things as a manufacturer or even as a doctor, even though some places allow this, like England, but nothing comes out of it. You won't hear anybody talk about it. They're all scared to death. You can do this in the United States in some states, I believe New York State, but you have to be a doctor to use them. So a doctor's just not going to come out and do this. Now, whether they use these on the side, don't tell anybody about it, I don't know again. We don't hear anything about it. So people are not going to come out and advertise this. So we get back into that same problem again because particularly in the United States, it's illegal to a large extent. But as I said, there are certain laws in certain places that allow doctors to do any non-invasive work that they want, and rightfully so. If this can assist, why not have that and use it as part of your process to help heal someone? But I've yet to see that advertised anywhere. And in general, I've never seen any of this advertised either in the UK where it's legal, and apparently you can't advertise. But how then do you run a practice? The other thing is there's no anecdotal information because it doesn't seem like any doctor will work with any radionic person because of the pressure in the industry. And the UK is a very unfree place, and there's a lot of pressures. Well, it may be quasi, and I use that term with great understanding. It's kind of legal there with a particular doctor working with you, but nobody's going to do that. You're not going to get doctors to come out and put their neck on the line. Because if this becomes something that is an industry standard, it means all physicians would have to do it. And that means that, again, there's no drugs, the system isn't carried through, and there's certainly nothing special about the British and the UK that make them freer on anything. It may be, quote, quasi-legal, but it's not able to be implemented because of all sorts of legal problems. You know, this is very typical of Europeans in general, such as places like Holland, the Netherlands, where, of course, they have a lot of non-legal stuff that is sold, otherwise known as marijuana, hashish, etc., and other drugs. Now, these are not legal in Holland. Holland just refuses to enforce those laws. They do go out every day and bust growers of marijuana in the Netherlands. So it's one of these strange things there. I think they finally legalized prostitution, but for many of the history of prostitution in Holland, which was had the red light district, a famous place where women stand in the windows so you can window shop your potential pleasure, was not legal. It was just tolerated. And there's some Dutch word for it. And this meant that we just looked the other way. And that's what they did in terms of things. And they do that with many drugs right now, and even hallucinogens, from what I understand. It's not legal. It's just not enforced, which is a very backward way of doing things. If you're going to allow this and you're going to allow people to sell it everywhere, well, why not just go ahead and legalize it and put a tax on it so the government can benefit and the people in that country as well? It's not. There's no legal marijuana anywhere in Europe except supposedly some little Swiss town somewhere which has legalized it for their citizens and only that particular town. So it's not everywhere, even though from what I understand, there's nothing but pot smoking in Switzerland going on all over the place. And if you go on any public transportation, trains, etc., it reeks of marijuana. So I am told. But there is certain legalities there, but not across the entire country. So these are all the things that happen that we have to understand. So what is the validity of this? Well, he was an interesting pioneer. He was a very prolific writer. He wrote about all sorts of issues from sleep to dowsing, was very big into that, produced these actual very attractive, well-built machines with nothing in them. Now, again, Did these produce homeopathic things that help people? Well, we don't know because we have verified from Dr. William Bankston that this is a psychic process of healing things. And if you look at his work, it's kind of shocking. And this isn't done by some goofball. This is a guy who's also done this for 30 years and basically set up a complete psychic healing system that is amazingly powerful and successful. And I think that ties into particularly the practice of radionics, which is a subtle concentration on a frequency based in a number regurgitating of an energy that you produce. So you want to produce an energy for healing acne or maybe a lung infection, and you concentrate on that and you tune the dials. Well, you've just created an energetic field. These are often called thought forms, which is an energy that your thoughts have created. But when you use a machine, you're kind of amplifying it. You're condensing it in within that machine, which allows it to be, quote, sent to the target consistently. So this is the benefit with using machines, which is dramatic. It doesn't just go on while you're sitting there thinking about it. You tune the machine in, you connect a target to it, and it continues to send that energy indefinitely. That's exactly what's going on. So it's a great, great benefit to use machines, and this is the next level of subtle energy physics, using machines and using photonic energy-based machines, light energy that can carry huge amounts of energetic informational fields. So you have to carry huge amounts of information, which generally can't be done through this process very well, through the psychic process alone. Photons are able to pick up almost unlimited energy and information to transfer wherever you want to. That's what quantum computers are based on. They're not based on physical components. They're based on photonic energy that you put the informational field into and then is transferred in 100% to whatever your target is. You can't move enough information through physical items to reach the level of information exchange that we need. Yet you can do that with the use of photonic energy, otherwise known as laser beams. We do it all the time right now in many different primitive tools. We can now do this through the use of computers where they work on laser beam transfer of information because you can put almost endless amounts into the right frequency lasers. Now, those are not red lasers, so you have to use the right frequency to do all this. And of course, the new technology that I am developing and will have on the market soon, of course, is laser-based, and which shows the advancement that this organization, at the level we're at, so which is the tops, the next level of everything. So it's very information, but very interesting. I'm not sure what to make of Bruce Copen. I never spoke with him. I watched the development of his units, used them occasionally, and now have several of his units, which I hope to test more. But they're not traditional radionic broadcasting units. They're mostly based in actually making some sort of homeopathic energy. Now, you could use these wells where you put certain energy in and transferring it to make a homeopathic. Well, you can put photographs in there. You could send it directly to that person. But I always have a problem using plastic wells, input-output plates. They're not metal. They're plastic in most of his tools. Now, the little one dial I got had a metal thing on it. But as I stated, no electricity was going through the unit. So it was just a dial on a surplus part that you just tuned psychically again. Well, if that's the state of the art from him, and while you would think that his other units may be a little different, they're not. Basically, they're just adding a lot of dials in a fancy cabinet. They're not really changing in what they're doing. So if this is the level that he developed, and of course having no scientific background, being basically a guy who wrote poems and plays, this is a serious problem as far as I'm concerned. While I think he understood the use of radiothesia, pendulums, and was fairly good at it. Well, that doesn't explain how to make a machine. And the fact is that what he made and people were impressed by it. You open them up, and there's circuits in there that do nothing. So this is what he does, and it's as simple as that. So basically, all you're getting is a classical Ruth-Drown flow pattern unit. But there is nothing being produced there. And the actual circuit boards, which I remember one person I worked with says, yeah, but your units, and this was 30 years ago, of course, your units don't have any circuit boards in them. Yeah, that's right. I don't have a whole bunch of lead and other toxins in there or anything else. They're pure empowerment, used by Ruth-Drown and Abrams and many others who use non-powered units and didn't use circuit boards, because those didn't come into use until many years later. Certainly in the 1920s, they didn't have circuit boards, and they didn't have much of that in the 50s either. So, it didn't have any of that, and these circuit boards did nothing. Now, one of the problems with circuit boards and computers is that your average computer, from what I understand, I don't know if this changed recently, but you probably have anywhere from 40 to 80 different toxic ingredients in your computer. So if you're going to start using that with subtle energy machines, there's a real problem here. There's an awful lot of lead solder in any computer, and particularly in circuit boards. Everything that's soldered in general, particularly if it goes back 20 or 30 years, has lead-based solders. Now, some have moved away from those as they can, but lead is certainly not something that has a healthful vibration to it. So you've got that, you've got all sorts of other toxic metals and products in a computer. So if you're going to use this to heal people or even to send certain energies, well, what is the problem going to happen there? Well, these energies, these negative energies there, and at the very least, if you don't pick up these energies as part of your actual transmission signal to that particular person, if that doesn't happen, you're still having all these toxic energies just sitting there. It's not helpful. So it's going to create negative energy fields just sitting there. And when you try and access them, you're going to impede the process of producing positive energy. So, and I believe that you're actually picking up negative energies and transferring it to the actual patient and even yourself. I think this is one of the reasons why all these radionic practitioners have died. They've got all these toxic ingredients in their machines, and they are taking those energies in. Yes, they are producing, particularly for other customers, positive energies to get a certain result. And this may work, but the bottom line is that you're also picking up all these other problems. So if you're continually using these as a particular practitioner, you're getting bombarded with all these negative energies constantly, almost forever, while someone else is getting a certain percentage of these for a period of time to take care of a particular situation. So I've always been very careful of what kind of stuff we put in our units and try and keep them as pure as possible. No lead solders, wires that are pure copper, plates that are pure copper, avoiding the use of particularly plastics and other things whenever possible. Now, unfortunately, aluminum isn't all that great for you either, but generally, if you're just using it as a instrument like in a potentiometer, you're not picking up much of the negativity of the aluminum. So you're not eating it, you're not licking the wires, so you're not having problems to pick that up. Aluminum is bad for you. Drinking out of aluminum cans is toxic and potentially deadly, and they find in Alzheimer's victims a lot of aluminum in their brain. And where do you get this from? Well, people drink all number of drinks out of aluminum cans, from beer and whiskey to everything else in between, or even right down to waters, and of course sodas and so forth, which can be very acidic, so you're probably getting higher amounts if you drink a soda out of a can. This is a serious problem. So here we go again, is that this doesn't make any sense. And since there isn't open discussion of this because of silly legalities, what happens is that we have all sorts of problems here of who is doing what. It's gossip from the manufacturer who's only going to tell you what sounds good. Other people may or may not understand how to use this, and if they are getting results, does it have anything to do with the technology, or is it just a psychic focus, which is the main purpose of most of these units, particularly the older ones? They seem to be psychic focusing tools and seem to work very well in that way. You can analyze using these machines, meaning what's going on, and I've done this on many occasions and been able to pinpoint a particular deficiency or problem, which I have then been able to verify with blood tests. So, I mean, these are great, and using machines and dials can be a fantastic help instead of just doing as Dr. Bankston does, which is just psychically tuning. But there's no way to reference things and to repeat things. If you do the same kind of psychic healing that Bankston does, and you did it through a particular machine, then you could replicate this very easily. Now, he's trying to do this with substances and other things that he's working on, and this is very, very interesting. Getting into machines is probably something he doesn't want to do because of, again, legality problems. But he's looking into charging different items. He found that cotton, pure cotton, holds a lot of energy. Well, who would have thought of that? So, cotton and water are the two big things. So you could technically charge water and drink it that would have healing capacities in it. So, which is basically kind of what a homeopathic preparation is producing anyway. You're producing these vibrations, and there really is no physicality to them other than in the subatomic world physicalities, these vibrations, these energies, and then you are consuming them that you're putting those vibrations in your body that is stored in a tablet. Now, you don't even really need a tablet. It could be just a tiny vial of water, or as Bankston has found, some pure 100% cotton gauze. That's the kind of cotton he used, cotton bandage gauze. And this seems to work amazingly. So, all of this kind of blends together. And unfortunately, as you said, we need major reforms, which will never happen. Radionics has been around since the 1920s in the form we have it now, and nothing has changed there. It's just a considered total quackery, and this is something that is sad. And since regular science has no answers, medical science has never had a breakthrough since the discovery of penicillin, this is just turned into a medical mafia, bleeding every penny from you, and literally bleeding you until you die, and very few people survive with their junk medicine who hasn't cured anything. They can't cure acne, they can't cure the common cold, dandruff is apparently out of the control of modern science. So all of these things continue to push this field in something we all need to be very careful of and understand what's going on. But jumping into buying expensive machines that have all these dials on that are very difficult to use, well, I don't think that's the way to go either. There are better ways and that can be done, and getting some simple units, which are even available now from different manufacturers, may be the way to go if you're interested in this instead of trying to get these expensive, complicated machines. So until the next level of machines come out that IGOS will produce, this is still an area that is very difficult to figure out what is really happening.